Hello, everybody. Once again, this is Jeffrey Daniel here coming to you from Abuja, Nigeria. Today is October the 3rd, 2022, according to that Gregorian calendar. And you guys know what I say about the Gregorian calendar. You know, we got to bang on it until we get it right, okay? Omitting hundreds of thousands of years of our glorious history. For what? Okay, so you know what? Today and from now on, I have a new I have a new standard that I want to throw down. I only want to speak to the beautiful people. I only want to speak to the beautiful people, okay? Now, you guys know that, okay, if you can't see the people who you're speaking to through the social media, how do you know if they're beautiful or not? Well, you know who the beautiful people are because the beautiful people are the ones who are in search of the truth. If you're in search of the truth, you are definitely a beautiful person, okay? And that's what I'm here to do, okay? So I'd like to say hello to all the beautiful people out there. I hope you guys have been keeping yourselves well. You know, I've been missing in action for a while. It's been a few months. I think the last time I posted one was around May or something like that before I went on tour with Shalimar. And I kept meaning to do it. And I said, okay, you know, I'm gonna do it from the UK, you know, just for a change of scenery. But then things just got caught up. And then I said, okay, let me do it from Amsterdam. That'd be cool with, you know, Amsterdam in the background of that. And just, I don't know, you guys, I don't know how I got delayed this long. And I have been watching very closely and scrutinizing all the ominous events that have been inundating our lives at an alarming pace. So now I got to play catch up as things continue to evolve and progress so precipitously that it's so difficult to keep up with everything, you know? Even as I was trying to compose and get my thoughts together from a couple of days ago, things just keep happening so precipitously, like they just keep evolving as we're going. So I have to keep, you know, upgrading what I want to say and upgrading what I want to do, trying to keep up with what's going on. So let me get in my disclaimers, okay? Anything I say is not meant to be discriminative against any individual, any group of people, or any race of people. I am not a racist. I don't play that, okay? I like to bang on issues and topics. I don't like to bang on individual people unless you deserve it, okay? So I endeavor to be the voice of reason and stand on truth. If you find some truths uncomfortable, the truth has no obligation to be comfortable. It just has to be honest. And the media is dumbing people down because you don't realize that the media is actually 10% entertainment and 90% propaganda. Think about that, you guys. Media, I'm talking about your movie industry, the recording industry, and all of our trusted news outlets. You guys have to understand, this whole media thing was set up, it wasn't really set up just for pure entertainment. It's set up for propaganda. You know, all governments, it's not just the American government, but basically all governments have an amount of propaganda that they put out there to keep people in check, how they want to run their, you know, their nation and that, you know. So you got to be careful what you digest. I told you all this before. Your diet isn't just what you eat, but also what you see, what you hear, and what you allow into your spirit, you know. So we're all being forced to accept constructs and paradigms that are incongruous to our better morals and growth as humans and the divine order of the universe. And that's why we're seeing our world taking such a dark turn lately, you guys, because we're not at the natural order of our universe. So all I have to say is, and check this out, you guys, lean in on this with me, okay? All I have to say is, people, you need to stop looking for happiness. Happiness is an ephemeral emotion, you know? Ephemeral meaning that, you know, it's not meant to last. It doesn't last. It comes and go. Happiness is an ephemeral emotion, a byproduct of satisfaction. It comes and it goes. We need to find contentment in our lives, you see? Be content with the meaningful things and positive people in your life, and that will warrant you happiness. You could be happy 1 minute and sad the next, but you can be content with yourselves forever. I want you guys to log that in your memory bank and think about that, okay? All these people trying to seek this momentary happiness. You know, stop trying to validate yourselves by the material possessions that you acquire. And stop trying to spend money on such expensive things with money that you don't really have on things you don't really need, trying to impress people who don't really care. And a lot of you are caught up in that. You got holding your money up to your ear, showing how many hundreds of thousands you're putting around your neck, how much you got on your pinky, how much, It doesn't matter how expensive or famous that fashion designer name brand is, or luxury car manufacturer, or the latest model handheld device costs. Because by the next season, it will all be outdated and you have to keep playing catch up. It's a perpetual trap to keep you financially enslaved. And for years, we've been falling for it, As I told you guys before, I don't have it in the room right now. I still got the iPhone 6 S, yeah. I already exchanged my iPhone 6 Plus for the Samsung because the memory kept getting all stacked up. And the Samsung, I could put in a memory card, so I don't have to worry about the memory, And I got my Japanese SoftBank mobile phone, so, But I'm not trying to play catch up with anybody. I don't have no dog in that race. I'm not in that race. I'm just doing what works for me. I am content with what I have, okay? Unless I need something, then I will make that change or upgrade. But unless I don't need it, who am I trying to keep up with? And the funny thing about it is, when you see people with, I got the iPhone 11, where they at? iPhone 13 now or whatever. I got the iPhone 13. It's not just for yourself. It's just that you can whip it out in front of people. And when I see they looking at me. Yeah, they know I got, look at me. That's what it's about, you guys, That's what it's about. So anyway, concerning the death of Queen Elizabeth, I entitled this commentary is entitled After the Queen, okay? This commentary is entitled After the Queen. So concerning the death of Queen Elizabeth II, I placed a post on Facebook to give my condolences to the people in Great Britain and those around the world who are grieving their loss and to help commemorate her passing. It was the humane thing to do at the time. I am a firm believer in there's a time for everything, okay? So now that's where the dichotomy begins. As there were people sincerely grieving the death of Queen Elizabeth II, and also those who wanted to use that occasion to weigh in on the historical horrors the British Empire is responsible for committing. And trust me, I did not want to be the antithesis for either side, okay? But I felt inclined to recognize the passing of the longest serving reigning monarch in modern times. Ever since I was born, and anyone that's under 70 years old has only known Queen Elizabeth II to be sitting on that throne. Not only that, she's a great-grandmother, a grandmother, a mother, and the royal monarch of Great Britain for over 70 years. Over 70 years. That in itself deserves at least respect for the duty and office that she served. Now, some might say the Queen was just a custodian, a symbolic presence to help propagate the illusion that some high authority cares about its citizens and has your best interest at heart. But they wave to you. They make consoling speeches in times of national adversities. They show up to selective events or charities, then retreat to the comfort of their billion-pound maximum security hideaways. And that's what the royal family does, the monarchs, So trust me, I am the last person, you guys know me, I'm the last person to try and overlook the atrocities and crimes committed by the British Empire against so many nations around the globe. But I am a sentient human being, and I can show empathy at a time when so many people are grieving their loss. Not only her family, but an entire nation, including many other nations and people around the world. And that's irrespective to how we may feel about what history has to say for Britain's dark past. But some individuals were hell-bent on using such a monumental occasion to vent out their disdain for the reign of the longest-serving queen in British history. Now, why do I say a monumental occasion? Is it because, I love the queen so much? No. It's because I respect the office of the queen and the persona she presented to the public. She's also the longest sitting female ruler in history. You might have to look back in ancient Egypt to make sure that that's right. But as far as what is recorded, she is the longest serving female ruler in history. And we just witnessed the biggest funeral ceremony in our lifetimes, and I chose to absorb that moment. That's just me, okay? But I do have to point out, I want to point out, you guys, what really touched me and almost brought me to tears. As I told you guys before, I am a sentient human being, okay? So something almost brought me to tears when I was watching on the news. It was like the night before the ceremony. I think it was when they were having the wake, and some of the royal family members were standing around the casket, things like that was going on. I was watching back and forth because it was a long, very long ceremony. But it was when they paused for 2 minutes of silence. Yeah, it was the night before the actual ceremony. They paused for 2 minutes of silence all over the UK. And during that silent period, the cameras were like showing, panning around the different locations around London, maybe around the UK, how people were observing the silence. And to me, that moment was very profound because it took me back a couple of years ago when so many people were protesting and counter-protesting in those same streets for George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter. I remember seeing all the anger and rage being pitted against each other, but here they all were, as one, fellow citizens coming together, pausing together in long lines to pay their respect, in pubs watching it on TV screens, in parks watching it on big screens, on the streets, all different nationalities, all ethnic groups mourning together for the Queen. It's as if the Queen brought the country together in peace, and if only for that moment, and I just got absorbed in that. But you could feel the togetherness and the sadness and respect in the air. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we all could get along like this all the time? Does it take the death of a queen to bring her citizens together so harmoniously? Think about that, you guys. And when I saw that in real time, it was live, and just to see all the people so solemnly coming together and showing their respect and mourning the Queen, regardless of how you might feel about the monarchy and the British Empire, but that is a moment in history, and we were there to witness that. So that in itself warrants that much respect and empathy from anyone. So as I said, it's a dichotomy, no doubt. It's a dichotomy. So especially after seeing the old films, her flying down to Nigeria in 1956 and to Kenya and Ghana to greet the African leaders. In fact, I don't know if you guys know this. In fact, she was in Kenya, okay? She was in Kenya when her father, King George VI, died in 1952, making her the Queen. So technically, she became the Queen while she was standing on African soil. Ain't that deep? Ain't that deep? Now, of course, her visit was in the interest of the British dominance over their colonies, but her presence was a diplomatic cushion to give a friendly face to the oppression that had been visited upon the people who were suddenly called Kenyans, Rhodesians, Ghanaians, Nigerians, and so forth. Now, then I saw the clip of her riding together with Nelson Mandela after he was released. He became the first Black African president of South Africa. Mind you, before the British or the Dutch and the Boers and all these people even colonized and invaded South Africa, don't think we didn't have Black rulers before. Yeah, we had Black rulers. We had chiefs, we had kings, but now this European system brought us presidents. So Nelson Mandela was the first African president of South Africa, okay? And I remember when the Obamas made their visit to the UK when Barack Obama became the president, okay? And I'm gonna tell you guys, this is crazy because greeting the Obamas, Queen Elizabeth II placed her arm around Michelle Obama's waist. Now, however, when Michelle reciprocated the gesture, the British press tried to give Michelle hell for touching the Queen. How dare her touch the Queen? But the Queen came to Michelle's defense, saying she's invited to come and see her anytime she pleases. She's a lovely woman. And for the Queen to come out and, vouch for you like that, that's like, because the Queen only speaks when it's required for her to come out and say something to the public. She just doesn't rant, indiscriminately and randomly to the public. So when the Queen speaks, the Queen speaks. She is the Queen, okay? She is the Queen. Now, I understand that gesture does not erase all the pain, all the lies and deception and acquisition of land and resources, all the lives lost trying to defend native lands and cultures. But that was the job she inherited, okay? And people were always fascinated with her present. Hell, you know what? The largest lake in Africa and the second largest lake in the world is named after Queen Victoria. But she never even visited Africa, and she never even saw the damn lake, but it was named after her. But Queen Elizabeth was standing on African soil when she became the queen, and she had to fly home immediately to deal with, her father, the King George VI's death and all that stuff, and then later she was coordinated. So now, I did have the opportunity to shake Queen Elizabeth's royal hand back in 1984 when I starred in the London West End musical Starlight Express. I was the original cast member. Now, it's produced by Andrew Lloyd Webber, the greatest musical composer in the business, who created Cats, Evita, Phantom of the Opera, Jesus Christ Superstar, so on and so forth, just to name a few. And I was the original character, Electra, the train of the future. That's what I was playing. I was playing on roller skates because we were playing trains, and they built a track all the way through the theater, going all the way to the back, bridges going upstairs. I made my entrance on a bridge that came down from the ceiling. It was a grand entrance, you guys. You should have seen it. And those of you in the UK who did see it, I know you guys enjoyed it, And that was a great honor for me, to be working with the greatest playwright in the business. So the Queen, Her Royal Highness, and Prince Philip, they came to the premiere. And after the show, they had us line up on the stage, me and along with the other cast members, Rachel, Stephanie Lawrence, Jeff Shankly, and P.P. Arnold, and all of us were there, on the stage. And Her Royal Highness came along, and they gave us, the protocol: don't speak first, allow her to speak to you, so on and so forth, And so she came by, and she got in front of me, and she said, "Oh, hello," and she put out her hand. I shook the royal hand, and she said something to the effect, I'm paraphrasing, but how fast were you going around the track? Because we're in the Apollo Victoria Theater, and we're skating around these tracks. We were racing. It was a train race, and I'm Electra, the train of the future, skating against Rusty, the steam engine train, against what did they call Jeff Shankly? He was a rock and roll train, which was a diesel engine train. And so I'm the train of the future, and all my songs sound computerized and techno-ish and stuff like that, So that was pretty much the premise, the concept of what was going on, And I just have to say, it was most definitely an honor. Now, Her Royal Highness and Prince Philip, coming to greet you. I didn't go to the Buckingham Palace. They came to us. Well, actually, they came to Andrew Lloyd Webber, but we just coincidentally happened to be there, okay? We're part of the show. So now, before any of you think that I'm doing a Stephen Fletcher, Uncle Tom, soft shoe dance just because I met the Queen, you guys have to understand, I'm coming from America, where we just have presidents. So it's considered a high privilege to meet royalty, especially the Queen of England, as she was the world's most recognized monarch, the world's most wealthiest monarch, and the person who owned the most real estate on the planet. Do you guys know this? Queen Elizabeth II owned the most, she's the most individual who owned the most real estate on the planet. Okay? You guys got to look this stuff up and see what's going on. And most of the British subjects don't even get a chance or the privilege to even greet her in public like that. And me coming from Aliso Village in Los Angeles, growing up dancing on Soul Train, Shalimar, we did our thing, which was, commendable. And now I'm standing and greeting the Queen of England, and my mother was in the audience too. I flew my mother and my sister Joyce over there as well. So they were there along with my girlfriend, So now that the Queen has been celebrated, mourned, and eulogized and laid to rest, for those of you who have been waiting to call out the British Empire for its ill-gotten gains, now would be the more appropriate time to do so, as I promised that I would do, okay? There's a time for everything. All right. Now, I was born in the United States, of course, obviously, a former British colony that's still run by descendants from Britain since 1776. Okay? Fast forward, I moved to London in 1983. Then I moved to Japan in 1991. which was forced open by an American Commodore, what's his name, Matthew Perry in 1853. And I'm now in Nigeria, which is a British empire that was sold to the English in 1900 for 865,000 pounds. That would be like about $108 million in today's currency. Nigeria was sold to the British for $108 million, which is now the largest population in Africa. It's not the largest in landmass, but we are the giant of Africa in population. Here we go. Let's go on. Then they amalgamated it into a country in 1914, and its independence was gained in 1960. So to make a long story short, I've always lived under British subjugation, directly or inadvertently, because when you look at the size of the British Isles, you wonder, how did they manage to take control over so many nations and cultures around the globe? The answer is simple: fallacious trade treaties and bigger guns. Okay? Can we say that again? Fallacious trade treaties and bigger guns. Now, we can go down the litany of colonizations and atrocities committed in the name of the British Empire, from stealing America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, then stealing Singapore from the Dutch, who originally settled there, and then from the native Malay ruler, to annexing Hong Kong under British control, colonizing India, and massacring peaceful protesters in Punjab in 1919, as well as the famine caused by Winston Churchill that killed about 3 million Indian citizens. Getting Chinese hooked on opium to fund their war efforts, and these are just a few of the horrific atrocities committed by the British to help support their great empire. And everyone's Great Britain, the great empire. And this is how they maintained it, you guys. But let's bring it up to the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. Okay, here we go. She was coronated in 1953. Mind you, that's 8 years after the Second World War, okay? So all of the earlier atrocities committed by the British Empire had nothing to do with Queen Elizabeth II. However, she did inherit her family's legacy and royal possessions, making her the richest monarch in history, maybe one of the richest in the world. The royal crown is said to be so expensive that it's priceless, the royal jewels that they have. You guys saw them. If you watched the funeral ceremony, they had her crown, the orb, and the scepter laying on top of the coffin. Collectively, that stuff is priceless. You can't even put a price on it, okay? 2,868 diamonds. We're talking about just the crown, only the crown. 2,868 diamonds, 17 sapphires, 11 emeralds, 269 pearls, and 4 rubies. But the centerpiece is called the Colonial diamond. Is the largest diamond found in Africa, worth hundreds of millions of pounds on its own. Okay, you know what? It was a thing, because if we say pounds, it's like, whoa, because the pound was so much greater than the dollar. Just recently, the pound has fallen equal to the dollar for the first time, I think, in my lifetime that's ever happened. The world is changing. Seasons are changing, you guys. Let me get on with the story. Then her royal scepter has the Colonial 1 diamond. Now that diamond in the scepter at the top of it is worth over $400 million alone, but with the rest of the scepter's jewels, it's worth a few more hundreds of million pounds more. Mind you, these priceless artifacts do not belong to any one individual. They belong to the monarchy and cannot be sold, only passed down to the future ruling monarchs in perpetuity. That's it. Now, for all of you who are advocating to abolish the monarchy, hey, they'll just liquidate the royal jewels and all that real estate that they own and be the richest private citizens on earth. So in retrospect, relieving them of their royal status will only be doing them a huge favor. They'll be kicking back like what? You know what I'm saying? If they were to abolish the monarchy, because look at all the wealth that they're holding, that they're in possession of. And all that wealth, Queen Elizabeth II was the individual who owned the most real estate on the planet. Now that's been handed down to Prince, we got to get used to saying King Charles the third, okay? That's for King Charles, all right? So now he is now the individual who owns the most real estate on the planet, because if you include the Commonwealth nations like Australia and New Zealand and things like that, they own continents and countries, Canada, blah, 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 blah. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on, okay? So, but where did all these magnificent jewels come from? That makes this a priceless collection of jewels that they keep locked up in the Tower of London, okay? Where did jewels come from? Primarily Africa. And how did they obtain all these priceless jewels? And that those of you who say, if the Africans are so smart and they were such a great civilization, why didn't they keep possession of all their expensive jewels? After all, they were living there thousands of years before the British or Europeans invaded. And that is a very valid question. If the Africans were so smart and so civilized, how did they allow these people to come in and take over their land and take all these jewels from them? Okay, and that's a very good question. Very good question. All right. So, what's the answer to the question? It all goes down to perception of values. Simple. Perception of values. Okay. All right. So, what do I mean by that? Is that the Africans had such an abundance of gold, diamonds, and other precious stones, and they primarily used them for ceremonial or decorative purposes. So they didn't hoard over them the way the Europeans did. Europeans had never seen such grand display of gold and precious stones adorning such mega edifices and utensils and bodywear. You know, there was no gold or diamond rush before the arrival of the Europeans. Like I said, perception of values, okay? Now, I spoke on this subject about a year or so ago, explaining how the Rothschilds, the De Beers, and the Oppenheimers created the global diamond market appraisals and a public dependency on diamonds to enrich themselves after they bought out all the diamond mines in South Africa and other diamond abundant territories. You see, so I want to say this to all you rappers right now and all you new school people that are going to Johnny Dang and the Ice Box and all these places and bragging about how many hundreds of $1,000s you're putting on a necklace and customized jewelry. Those diamonds and jewels aren't even worth what the appraisals that they're telling you. They created the appraisal system to suit themselves and enrich themselves. So when they tell you this is a so-and-so carat, this is a so-and-so carat and all that stuff, they created all this stuff for you guys, you know, and you guys are falling for it. And customized jewelry will not resell at the price that you bought it for because it's customized, which means it has to be broken apart and melted down in order to be resold. And you're never going to get the resale value off of that. So you guys, I'm not saying don't go out and buy something nice. And it's, you know, but to just wearing 5 necklaces at one time, then in your ear, on almost every finger, then on your wrist. And it's just, I mean, come on, you guys, it's overkill. What are you guys proving? What are you guys doing? That money could be going into a future, you could be investing it into a business, becoming an entrepreneur. It could be going into your children's future college fund because you're not going to be making that kind of money forever. It seems like it when you're making it. Trust me, the average lifespan of the average entertainer is between 3 to 5 years, and the luckiest ones go over to 10 or longer, like a Snoop Dogg or a Jay-Z and those people. That's not common. Most people don't last that long. So I hope you guys are doing something smart and investing your money in land and property. I told you guys before, America is for sale. Why the hell ain't you guys buying it? America's for sale. Buy some land. Okay? So let me get on, you know. Now, let's look at what has gone down on Queen Elizabeth II's watch and what exactly she may have been culpable of. Now, I mean, we cannot blame everything the British Empire committed on the Queen. Then again, if there are atrocities committed with her complacency, then we should call her out on it, okay? So let's look at what's happened during her reign, all right? And it's a 70-year lifespan, so we just can't, you know, capture everything, you know. I mean, how long would that take? But I'm gonna try to point out some, highlight moments, all right? Okay, here we go. Let's look at the Malayan emergency, okay? I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but this is called the Malayan emergency. Let me get a sip and wet my whistle, you guys. Okay, we're getting to the end of the rainy season here. So the weather's trying to come up. The rainy season in Nigeria lasts for months. For months. It started in the spring and came all the way now to the fall. So this is October. It should be ending in October, and the heat will start coming up. And then as the past few days have starting to get warmer, but it was raining like hell in the morning, and by the afternoon it opened up. So getting to the end of the rainy season. All right. Anyway, the Malayan emergency. There's a Malayan emergency that began in 1948 and lasted until 1960. Mind you, it had already commenced 5 years before the Queen was on the throne. So the British colonizer put Malaysia under a state of emergency because a group of rebelling Malaysians formed a guerrilla militia trying to gain their independence from the British Empire. This lasted 12 years and into the Queen's first 7 years on the throne. Okay, so it went into her reign, her first 7 years on the throne. Now, it's reported that 6,700 guerrilla fighters and 3,000 civilians lost their lives, and over 400,000 to 1 million civilians were placed in concentration camps called new villages. Now, how do you go from 400,000 to 1 million? I mean, that's a leap. It's less than 500,000 or it's up to 1 million. So these figures are conservative because they're not going to really tell on themselves, you know. So I could say those concentration camps had over 1 million. I can say more than 3,000 civilians lost their lives in the guerrilla fighters, okay? Because they always get these conservative, figures, you guys. All right. And so they put them in these concentration camps. Then to complete the quelling, the British sprayed crops with Agent Orange. Wow. Biological warfare, okay? In order to starve the insurgents. But I like to call them freedom fighters. Isn't that funny how Native people defending their own homeland are considered insurgents by the invading forces? And this was described as one of the few successful counterinsurgency operations performed by a Western nation. It was considered a successful counterinsurgency operation because they eventually did quell them, okay? But this atrocity had commenced before the Queen was on the throne, but lasted 7 years into her reign. Was there anything that she could have done? Or was she even able to do anything about it? She's the Queen. She wasn't the Prime Minister. She is not the Parliament. She's the government. How much power and how much influence would she have over such operations and, these type of wars and these type of things? We don't know, So let me move on, you guys, okay? Like I said, I'm not trying to absolve her from any of her doings, but I'm just being fair. We got to be fair, you guys, okay? We have to call it for what it is, okay? Call a spade a spade. A spade a spade. A queen, queen of hearts, whatever, okay. All right. Have you guys heard of the Kenya Mau Mau rebellion? Now, after I found out about this information and this history, I had to go back to when I was a kid. Because when I was a kid, there was a song called Papa Mau Mau, Papa Mau Mau, Papa Mau Mau. They're singing about this. Singing about the Mau Mau as entertainment. Listen to what happened. There was the Kenya Mau Mau rebellion that kicked off in 1952, 1 year before Her Royal Highness was coronated. She was coronated in 1953. So once again, something had commenced before she got on the throne, okay? So, which once again found the native people rebelling against the economic marginalization, let me get on my tongue, and violence by the British. After the British colonizers gave away acres upon acres of land to the white settlers and employed the native inhabitants to work on their own land for the European settlers for extremely cheap wages. It was the Mau Mau group of Kenyans who launched the anti-colonial uprising against the white settlers, causing the British to launch a brutal counterinsurgency campaign against them. Now, they report over 100,000 Kikuyu and Nehru and I think it's the Emu peoples were thrown into camps where they endured torture, beatings, interrogations, and sexual assault. Now, all the time, over 100,000. Come on, you guys. These numbers are conservative. It's had to be much more than that, but they're being conservative. So let's roll with it, okay? So at least they said over, okay? Over 100,000. They didn't say how much over, but over 100,000. There were the Kikiyu people, the Nehru, and the Emu people. But it was the Mau Mau people who formed these militia groups and went out and fought against the British. These people were fierce, you guys. So for people who thought that the native African people in all the countries just laid back and let the people take over them, no, they fought back. There was resistance. There was lots of resistance. So by 1960, according to the Kenyan Human Rights Commission, 90,000 Kenyans were killed and 160,000 were in camps. Camps. That's a kind word for a prison, okay? Camps. We're going camping. 160? I dare to differ with that. Okay, anyway. And you know these figures are always conservative. So the Mau Mau were ultimately defeated, but this atrocity led to the independence of Kenya. Do you all know what price of independence from the British is? There's never true economic independence. In fact, it became far more convenient for the British to let the natives of the former colonies rule over themselves as long as the British maintained control over the nation's trade and economy in perpetuity. Meaning forever, indefinitely, till today. So now the British didn't have to deal with all of the uprising and the rebellions on the ground anymore. They can just financially oppress the former colonies from the comfort of their own home country. Till now, the Kenyan government is demanding 200 billion reparations for restitutions from land theft and various colonial crimes. Let me say that again. Until today, okay? Until today, the Kenyan government is demanding 200 billion reparations for restitutions from land theft and various colonial crimes. And these demands are still falling on deaf ears. Not surprising, okay? Now, I'm just going to point out a couple of things, you guys, and I'm going to bring us up to date with this one. Have you guys, I know the people in the UK, they're very well aware of this. The people in the West Indies, you're well aware of this. I don't know if the people in America and other places are aware of the Windrush scandal, okay? Why is it called the Windrush? Because the Windrush is the name of the ship that brought a lot of the West Indian people into the UK. Now, what did transpire during the reign of the Queen was the Windrush scandal, okay? Now, in 1948, 4 years before the Queen was coronated, the British government invited citizens of its Commonwealth territories from the West Indian Islands to come to the UK and help rebuild the society. Because after the German Nazi bombing raids, they left the UK pretty much in shambles, in a state of shambles. It's pretty much in shambles. So they were offered NHS, that's National Health Service, assistance for doing the jobs that the UK citizens either found unsavory to do or they didn't have enough workforce among their citizens. Because they just went through a lot of bombing raids. The soldiers were sent off to help fight and everything. It's a nasty war that it just, ended. So they needed people to help them out. So rebuilding infrastructures, transportation, health services, just to name a few, bringing their colorful food, music, dance, art, and writings gave a fresh nuance to the British society that remains intrinsically visible today. So a number of people, Black people, came in from Jamaican and other Caribbean countries as Commonwealth citizens, which didn't require any visa fees. But these optimistic arrivals were met with racial prejudice from the British public and discrimination at every turn, refusing housing tenancy and other civil rights. Then to make matters worse, just recently, so we're coming up to speed, recently in 2018, in the Windrush scandal, they found the British government had unjustifiably detained, denied legal rights to, and deported many of the people who thought they were citizens after arriving in the UK in 1948 on the invitation of the British government, or some of them were even born in the UK. You guys are going to have to lean on this. Since 2010, some who had traveled back home for whatever reason or vacation, they were refused re-entry back into the UK, which had been their only home for decades. People lost jobs, they lost homes, they lost their social benefits. These people, can you imagine the traumatization that these people went through being born and raised in the UK, or had living there most of their life and left the country to go home and was refused re-entry back into the UK? So what are they going to do back in the Caribbean where they didn't know like that? They knew family members in that, but they didn't grow up in that society. They grew up in the UK. This is what was going on, you guys, from 2010 into 2018. This definitely happened in the Queen's reign, okay? She's an older woman, but it's happened during her reign. This debacle definitely happened under the Queen, under her watch, and was instituted by, get ready for this, you guys, get ready for this. This law was instituted by, get ready for the bomb, the former Prime Minister, Theresa May, back when she was the Home Secretary. Ain't that a blip? And I was feeling sentimental about the way Boris Johnson dogged Theresa May out of the Prime Minister seat. They also found that as far back as 1950, an ambiguous policy was made to reduce the number of blacks in the country. However, that was 3 years before Elizabeth was crowned queen, but she had to be aware of this racial injustice happening in her country. Did she try and help reverse those policies, or was she complacent? We don't know. And this is what we have to think about, okay? Now, I'm only saying this for those when the ceremony was coming on and the queen had died, even before they put her in the ground, even before they did the march, people coming in, how look at us black people being so sentimental and being this, how dare black people. But being a human is not a crime. Being a sentient human being is not a crime. Showing empathy at times of empathy is not a crime. And I don't think we should be lambasted for being such a person, because I'm not absolving anybody for what they did. I'm not trying to overlook anything. I am a living testament of colonial rule, subjugation. My family, my mother, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and down the line. So I'm not going to say, oh, well, she was a queen and she was a nice person. So no, but if she is culpable of something, yeah, we can hold her that. We can hold her to that. She knew what was going on. She's a queen. Is she a policymaker on those levels? Well, Theresa May was the Home Office Secretary. She implemented that law, okay? Not the Queen. Did they need the Queen's approval of it to sign off on it? I don't know the rank and file and the protocol and how they do these things, And if you do know, you can come out and tell us. You can enlighten me. You guys can come in down there on the comment section and come on. So I'm trying to get with this. I don't want to be too long because I want to touch on a couple of other things, you guys. Okay, so let me tell you guys. When I moved to the UK in 1983, all I heard was Caribbean music. Not only from Caribbean artists from Jamaica, such as Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, Jimmy Cliff, and Black Uhura, and so on. Also the UK-grown artists such as Aswad and Musical Youth, just to name a few. But many white British artists were heavily influenced by the Caribbean music, giving foundation to Sting and the Police, UB40, The Specials, Funboy 3, Culture Club, and the list goes on and on. So while they were bathing in the West Indian culture, they were also trying to expel the very people responsible for bringing it to the UK. Speaking of dichotomies. And once again, you guys, as I always say, I do not put this on every English citizen, every British citizen, because there's a lot of British citizens who genuinely loved what was going on with the West Indian people. There's a lot of them that loved the West Indian people. They got along with them. They formed musical groups with them. They were just you know, had an unsatiable appetite for what was coming in from the West Indies, because it's something that, new to them. It's something, when you hear those reggae rhythms coming in, those heavy basses, those drums, boom, 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 boom. I mean, it's like a heartbeat. You just got to move, It's enough to hypnotize anyone, But yet there were people who were resisting it because they felt that the UK in their mind was pretty much like a homogenous society, and now all of a sudden you're bringing this in, which is odd because one of the black, they don't like to talk about this, you guys, but one of the African, I want to say black, that's a misnomer, black, one of the African rulers of Rome, one of the African Caesars, came because you guys know that Rome are the ones who established Britain. That's why they called it Britannia. They established London. That's why it was called Londinium. And this black Caesar came in and helped build that wall around the city of London. He helped establish the city of London, which today stands there because you guys think the whole greater area is London, where the London Eye and the Parliament and Piccadilly Circle. That's not London. That's Westminster. The city of London has its own mayor. It has its own bank. When the Queen or the royal monarch went to visit, they need an appointment to go in there. They just don't walk up in there. That's where they're holding all the gold and all that stuff, like their version of Fort Knox. So still today, that place is maintained like that. Just like the Vatican City is in the middle of Rome, the city of London stands like that. And it was a black Caesar who helped establish that. I had another thing I was working on, and I had his name there, so forgive me for not having his name. But he was a black Caesar of Rome. You guys have to understand something. When you see these Roman movies about Rome, it's always all these Caucasian-looking people in the Senate, and it's always Caucasian-looking Caesars. Rome isn't a country. Rome was an idea. It's a republic that was established at that place. There it was called Rome. Rome was an amalgamation of people coming from all over the Mediterranean, from Egypt, from the Middle East, from the upper Mediterranean. That whole area were people who came together to comprise the Roman Empire. So they had a mixture of Africans and Middle Easterns and the Europeans, which they were bringing the culture from Egypt, out of Egypt, and that up into Greece, into Rome. You see? So it's not surprising that there was black Caesars in Rome. It's not surprising that there were black popes in the Vatican, because they were the people who helped them establish all these things with the writing, with the math, with the science, with the astrology and the cosmology and the medicines and all these things. They all came out of Egypt, up into the Mediterranean, all right? So that's just a fact. A historical fact that you guys may not have been aware of, since I'm on that, talking about London, okay? So where was our dear Queen during all of this going on? Back in August, before her death, Prince Charles, now King Charles III, he pledged to ensure that the Windrush generation contributions to Britain are understood and appreciated. That's what he said this past August, before the Queen's death. Prince Charles at the time, Prince Charles, now he's King Charles III, he pledged to ensure that the Windrush generation's contributions to Britain are understood and appreciated. Once again, kind words that serve as a band-aid over a bullet wound, considering the loss of jobs, properties, and displaced lives unjustifiably. But that's what the royal family does. They come out in times of adversities, and they come out and give consoling speeches. They wave and this and that. So we have to think, how responsible are they for the atrocities committed by the British Empire, by the British military, by the British government and the prime ministers? They do have influence in some areas and some things, but how much, I can't say. We don't know that. If some of you do know, please, enlighten us. I always say, you guys, I'm not here to tell you what to think and tell you. I'm here to just give you a perspective, and we can share our perspectives, and I'm open to receive yours. Okay? All right. So, so here we go. Are any of you aware of this? Another historical fact that a lot of people don't even know about. Are you all aware that since 2014, African countries that are former French colonies have to pay 85% of their foreign reserves into the French central bank, putting $500 billion annually into the French treasury. Can I say that again? Former African French colonies are paying 85% of their foreign reserve into the French central bank, putting $500 billion annually into the French treasury. The French treasury even prints up and controls the currency of these African francophone countries and doles out their money incrementally. Damn, that's like giving a child an allowance. But these are supposed to be so-called independent African countries. Gabon, Togo, Senegal, is Sierra Leone, former French, Morocco, all these former French colonies, they're still paying these tributaries back to France to the tune of $500 billion annually. That's the price of independence, you guys. These African countries channel more money into the French central bank than they receive in aid, but yet they're called African third world countries or shithole countries, while draining Africa for everything they could possibly get their paws on. In fact, if the pyramids weren't so damn heavy, they would have stolen those too. But lately, they are trying to take credit for building them. Man, get the jack crack-a-lack out of here. That bull. Anyway, you guys know the story. You see all these documentaries and things about who really built it. Must have been aliens, and the Africans didn't do this and this and that and that and yet, And the crazy thing is, if outside people, after Hebrews, as they claim, or whoever, came into Egypt and built these amazing monuments and edifices, how come nothing similar to it is in their own country? How do you have such ingenious know-how to construct these things mathematically, with geometry, because they're in line with the constellation and the stars? This thing is damn near the size of a mountain, and the base of it is built, and the top of it is built in alignment with a star constellation, Orion, I think it is. That's, you guys, that's the highest level of mathematics. So if you guys had that know-how and technology, how come nothing in your own home country is similar to it? Okay, think about it, okay? All right, anyway, and to be honest, the Queen's reign ushered in a plethora of former colonies gaining their independence from the British Empire. I'm not saying she was responsible for it, but that's what happened once the Queen came in. Ghana being the first to gain its independence in 1957, and just 4 years into the Queen's rule, all right? So her 4th year into her rule, Ghana got its independence. Now, whether she played an instrumental part or was opposed to them gaining their sovereign freedom, the fact remains that these former British colonies remain in a state of economic colonization today. There was never been total unequivocal independence, ever. And that's just addressing economic colonization, let alone the damaging, lingering effects of cultural, psychological, and social colonization. When you look at Africa's society today, you're looking at Africans living in Africa in a European paradigm and wondering why it's so difficult for them to advance. That European paradigm was never meant for you to progress. Get out. Africans, you got to get out of this European paradigm. If you are truly an independent nation, the first thing I would have done was change the name of my African country from its colonial exonym back to an indigenous African endonym that reflects the soul of my ancestors and my indigenous African culture. Now, an exonym is a name outsiders call you, and an endonym is a name you are culturally recognized by. As long as you bear the colonizer's name, you're still connected to him, and having an invisible colonial umbilical cord still attached. It was Flora Shaw, Lord Lugard's wife. I think let's call it Nigeria. The Nigerians, the West African people did not name this place Nigeria. They did not put this borderline that amalgamated the Sokoto Empire, the Ife Empire, the Benin Empire, the Kalabari, all these places. The Africans didn't do that. That's what the British did, okay? So I think if I became the president, the first thing I would do is like undo a lot of things that they did and redo it for the benefit of us so we can have unity and we can move, in confluency with each other. I think that's what needs to be done. I think that's the crux of the problem. So we Africans pray in the name of foreign saviors. We eat imported foods containing harmful preservatives and ingredients that are slowly killing us. We practice a Western medical construct that's designed to make the big pharmaceutical companies rich while we're administering medicines that have worse side effects than the actual illnesses because they outlawed our natural holistic healing systems. I have to do a whole commentary on this one, you guys, because we need to talk about that. And we have a dying desire to live like the European selfish, luxurious, individualistic lifestyle. And by any means necessary. Does Hush Puppy ring a bell to anybody? Okay, all right. We even bleach our skin to try to look like our colonizers and abandon our morally rich cultures to live like them. We even measure our level of intellectual aptitude by a standard created by them. And the list of lingering, damaging effects of colonization goes on and on and on, you guys. It's still here. It's still in our psychic. It's still in our society. It's still in our infrastructure. But we're Africans living in Africa. Okay, you guys got to unwrestle ourselves out of this. Now, I know what you guys are going to say. We're not supposed to talk about it. Just shut up and get over it as if it never happened. No matter the damage that still permeates through our African societies to date, once we start talking about it, but that was then, can't you guys get over it? Why are you guys so angry? And then, you guys, how do you get over something that has not even ended yet? That is still ongoing? How do you get over something that's still ongoing? The Holocaust ended in 1945. That's over. You can get over that. Okay? World War II ended in 1945. Now you can get over it because it has ended. Economic, social, mental, spiritual, religious colonization is alive and well today, you guys. Geographic, tangible land, some of that too, because they own things that are happening in the land too, but not the way it was. They're not like saying that they own the whole country, but let an African leader come up and say, from now on, this country's resources is going to benefit the people of Africa. There's a war, there's an exile. That guy's gone. It's happened. There's a whole history of it, okay? That's another story. We'll talk about all that, you guys. But still get around, with the queen and all that stuff. Some will say that, how did, I can't name all the events that took place during the reign of Queen Elizabeth, as we're talking about 70 years of history and all the British empires and Commonwealth nation that span around the globe. And it makes you wonder, how did this little island nation across the channel from Europe make such an impact on the world, okay? Well, some will say it was by military might. Some say by natural survival instinct. Some might think it's from being superior, or some will say it's because of barbaric and inhumane conquest. Regardless to whichever historical perspective you may subscribe to, the English crown has been passed down for generations, does represent an empire that has decimated entire cultures around the world for the benefit of its own survival. Not to mention helping kick off the Industrial Revolution that started in 1760 through 1840, the rise of the coal and steam power engines, machines and factories. Until then, Earth had enjoyed pristine, uncontaminated environment for millions of years, and the Earth's natural ecosystem was still intact and thriving. Can you imagine the polluting activities of only the past 200 years or so has us all now panicking about the survival of our environment? I can only compare what the Europeans did to our environment to immature children playing with a loaded gun. I have said this before and I will say it again. Western industrialization is toxic to nature. Look around us, you guys. Look around us and see. Okay? Why are we still all sitting back allowing European nations, not just individual people, I'm saying talk about the nations, you guys. I'm banging on the nations. Why are we still sitting back watching and allowing the nations to destroy our planet and the nature that sustains us? So, We cannot just call out the queen for the atrocities her nation has committed without calling out the empire itself. Okay? Now, the big question is, now that the longest serving queen in British history is no longer on the throne, what will become of the many member nations of the British Commonwealth that are vying for a clean breakaway, just as Britain broke away clean from the EU under its Brexit mantle? Okay? And you got to be careful when you do things like this, because once you set that precedent, it's a ripple effect. Excuse me. So we can take history for what it has left us to either learn from and be better, or continue to hate and kill each other with no hope for the future. The queen is gone, but the empire is still here. So what are we going to do about our future? That's the question. What are we going to do about our future? Okay. Now, I know I'm getting winded, you guys, and I haven't been with you guys for a long time, but I just have to, I can't go over and skate over what's going on. I have some notes I'm going to say, but I'll just make this as succinct as possible, talking about what's happening with the Putin invasion. First of all, I've said this before, you guys, and I'm not insensitive to the people in the Ukraine. I'm not being insensitive to the Russian soldiers that are being killed once they enter Ukraine, because Ukraine is fighting a good battle on ground, but Russia is sending over the biggest rockets and just totally obliterating the whole place. But anyway, to make a long story short, you guys, this is why I don't have no dog in that race. These people know each other. Ukraine sits on the border of Russia, and it used to be part of the Soviet Union. These people know each other. A portion of the Ukraine speaks Russian. They know each other. That's a family feud. That's a family feud. The only thing I don't understand about this, and what I got to say about this, is when Putin first raised his eyebrow about Zelensky in Ukraine wanting to join membership with NATO, which they had promised in the Minsk agreement that they wouldn't do so. And Putin said back then, was 2016, 14 to 16, that if you do that, that's going to be a red flag issue, and we will respond militarily. That had already been stated. Now, I don't want to talk about Russia or Ukraine. I want to talk about America. And you guys got to see America for what it is. If you know that you have a megalomaniac leader who used to be, a commander of the KGB, and now he's the president of the second largest army in the world, and a communist country at that. When Putin first made his intentions known, instead of de-escalating this thing, America jumped in. Oh, if you cross the Ukraine border, you're going to have hell to pay. You can't do it. And all this, hyperbole that they were barking at them, instead of trying to de-escalate it. So you guys, I want to implore everybody, you have to think outside the box. People, think. Why would America help instigate this little country into a war against the big bear, instead of trying to de-escalate it so that this wouldn't happen? Look at the lives that are lost now. Look at the total destruction of entire cities that have gone down, when all that could have been averted if America had tried to come in and use diplomacy first, rather than barking back at Putin. Because these wars aren't being fought on American soil. It's the Ukrainian people that are suffering. So it makes you think, was this done intentionally? In order? Because if you know that they have experts, they know these things. If you know that between the Russia and the Ukraine, that about 90% or 80% of the grains are coming from there, and they won't be exported out if a war were to commence. You know that all these natural gas and other petroleum that surfaces a greater part of Europe and all that would not be able to flow if a major war were to break out. With all that at stake, why would they allow that war to break out? That's like if I know my next door neighbor owns a big demolition crane or something like that, and he's kind of not too stable mentally, and he's not really necessarily picking on me, but I go to him and say, you know what? I'm going to join these other people there because they got about 15 cranes bigger than you. So I'm going to have them parked outside my house from now on. He's going to go, oh, hell no. He's going to bring that coin and probably try to smash me up and get me out of here before I can bring those other ones in. I mean, this is just it's common sense, you guys, that you should try by any means necessary to try to avert such a war or invasion or whatever you want to call it from taking place in the first place. Now that it had happened, now they're talking about, well, Russia's not talking and they're not sitting at the table. Well, Putin is saying this. Now look what they did. They handed this stuff to Putin on a silver platter. Now Putin just came out and said, see that I'm talking about, you guys, these things are evolving as we go along. It's just happening so precipitously I have to keep up. Putin just came out and said, in fact, these 4 territories within Ukraine, from now on, they're Russian territory. So now I'm considered the Russian territory, which means some of the missiles that America has been supplying Ukraine with, if they now fire those missiles into these territories trying to get the Russian out, they're now making a direct assault against Russia. Third World War. And these people are allowing this to culminate into this. They're allowing this to reach this crescendo rather than trying to avert it. Now Biden came out one more time. Well, we don't recognize that. Putin claiming these 4 territories. Well, we're not going to recognize it. And, the international community, do you think Putin gives a damn about what you recognize or not recognize? Do you think Putin's invasion is predicated by your acceptance or not? Of course not. That doesn't mean jack to Putin. You see what the man is doing? Another thing, I said this before, why are they advertising every damn thing they do? Why do they have to go on CNN and all these news outlets and go, well, America is providing this amount of weapons to the Ukraine to help with long-range missiles, and America is bringing in this through Poland. Why are they saying this in real time? Why are they advertising to the Russian military exactly what their strategies are in real time? That does not make sense. You guys have to think. You guys have to think. I think something's... One more thing I'm going to bring to you guys' attention. Don't ever let them fool you. These big leaders have these red phones in their offices. They talk to each other. So what we're hearing about their communications on the news and stuff like that, that's one thing. Biden can pick up a call and talk directly to Putin anytime he wants. Putin can talk to Biden anytime he wants. They can talk to the UK anytime they want. They can talk to France and Germany anytime they want. But they come out in public and they get on these TV shows and they let us hear what they want us to perceive is happening and why it's happening. You guys have to think. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. I'm not saying that's definitely what's going on, but these people, they talk. They talk. It's just like a gang. If you got a gang on the east side of Chicago, on the west side, but somebody moves into a terrorist territory or something, that gang boss gets in touch, hey, your man moved in on our side. It's going to make me look bad to the other one, so I'm going to have to do something to show my strength. Okay, so what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to move that, but I'm not going to go into your side, but I just have to let them know I can't be dealt with lightly. Okay, you go in, you do that. As long as you don't come into here, you're fine. That's what's going on between Russia and Ukraine. Trust me, you guys. Trust me. That's what's happening right now. They talk to each other. So take what you see happening in the news outlets and what they're reporting. Look at it, but scrutinize it very carefully. And I always told you guys before, it's not the what, it's not the when and the hows. You have to get to the why. Why is this happening? Follow the money trails. Follow the benefits of allowing something for this to happen. Isn't it funny, while we're in the middle of all the economies are pumping money to stop their currency from falling. As I said, the British pound is now on par with the American dollar for the first time in my lifetime that I remember. Japan had to put trillions of yen into their economy to stop the yen from falling. It's happening everywhere, you guys. In the middle of all this is the last thing I'm going to talk about, you guys. In the middle of all this, they want to send a rocket to the moon. There's famine going on. There's a threat of a global economic crisis. And the best thing they can do, we're going to send a rocket to the moon. Now, I want to talk about this mission to the moon real quick, you guys, because this is some funny stuff, you guys, okay? And I'm going to prove to you guys, unequivocally that they never went to the moon before. And I know that's been a controversial issue. It's been contentious and everything. And there's a guy, oh, you're a denier. You guys, look at the facts. Look at the facts. And I said, why? Okay, this is my last. I got to get through this because I'm getting winded, you guys. But it's been a while, so I got to catch up, okay? It's nice talking to you all again, okay? Nice seeing you all again. Okay, anyway, check this out, you guys. The last thing I want to touch on is the so-called mission to the moon. Now, this has been a very contentious subject for decades. And all you have to do is use common sense and practical science. And when you combine those two tools, it's more than apparent that the Apollo moon landing was a big hoax. Yeah, I said it. It's a lie. How the hell are they going to wait 50 years to do what they supposedly already accomplished and then fail to launch the rocket after 3 attempts? Now, hold up. I'm not basing my claims on just the failed launch attempts. It gets much, much better than that. They didn't put humans, it's called the Artemis 1 rocket. They didn't put humans in it, in the moon rocket, no. Instead, they strapped 2 space crash test dummies. They strapped 2 space crash test dummies in there. Come on, y'all, space crash test dummies. How obvious can it get? Now, here's the dead giveaway. Come on, lean in with me, you guys. You gotta lean, do that smooth criminal lean with me, you guys. You know, they put the astrorad radiation vest on the crash test dummies to help read how much radiation the dummies will be exposed to. Wait, listen to their description. It's not mine. I did not make this up. It's called the astrorad radiation vest, and it's meant to read the amount of radiation that the dummies, not humans, will be exposed to. The astrorad is a personal equipment for astronauts to wear beyond LEO, low Earth orbit, and markedly reduces REID, radiation exposure induced death. It markedly is supposed to reduce the radiation induced death, such as cancer, while eliminating the possibility of ARS, acute radiation syndrome. This vest is supposed to help measure things to stop radiation exposure induced deaths and acute radiation syndromes causing things from cancer and things like that. So it's due to SPE, solar particle events. Astrorad was developed by Stimrad and Lockheed Martin to mitigate the SPE, polar particle effects, with initial research. They didn't say research back in 1969. They are now testing the space crash test dummies with these vests to read the amount of radiation that they will be exposed to see if it's gonna be safe for humans. You guys, I'm not making this up. Okay, let's continue because I gotta get out of here. What did they just admit? Is anybody paying attention to the bold print? Are you reading the writing on the wall? Are you smelling the coffee because the kitchen's burning down? Not the coffee's gone, all right? And all the silly acronyms, the SPE, the ARS and the REID and the LEO, the low Earth orbit, all these silly acronyms and stuff like that, It's sounding more like a SNL skit, Saturday Night Live, okay, SNL, I had to throw in another acronym, So all these acronyms they're putting in there to make it sound all fancy and everything. Why don't they just say what they're saying? Because they know that traveling through the Van Allen radiation belt that surrounds our planet could expose humans to deadly radiation levels. Now, I just saw something on there like, well, as long as they're not in the belt too long, it's not that harmful for humans, but they don't know. That's why they're putting the vest there to go out there and try to read how much radiation that they will be exposed to if they were to travel through the Van Allen radiation belt, plus unlimited amounts of radiation traveling throughout space. Once they even get past the belt, they're going to be in a little more open space. And I'm going to tell you guys about that real quick. You guys hang on with this because this is very juicy, very juicy. Now, when you consider those aluminum tin can looking capsules that they used back in 1969 and in the 1970s compared to our handheld Android phones. Do you know that these Android phones don't have double, not 100, but million times faster computing power than what they had aboard those capsules? Google it and look it up for yourselves if you guys don't believe me. These things have millions of times computing power than what they had on aboard those capsules and back at the NASA Space Center. So if they had done all that with such rudimentary equipment back in 1969 and the 70s, why all this trouble and caution doing it again 50 years later with superior equipment? Common sense and practical science. In fact, I read that in order to reach the moon, they would have to build a rocket about the size of the Eiffel Tower or the Empire State Building. Guess what? The Apollo rockets and Gemini rockets, they weren't as tall as this rocket. This rocket is the biggest rocket they've been. They're telling on themselves, if you guys understand the information. So they took parts of the space shuttle, they defunct the space shuttle program. They took parts of the space shuttle that has a history of flights up to the ISS, acronym again, the International Space Station. And please keep in mind that the International Space Station is not in space at all. No shuttle mission ever went into space. Listen to what I'm telling you guys. It's in an ELO, a low Earth orbit, okay, around the Earth, using Earth's gravitational pull and occasional boosters to keep it on course. It's also the law of inertia, which states that any object will remain in its initial condition, either in motion or resting, unless an external force is applied to it. So that's kinetic energy one-on-one. Follow me, you guys, because you're going to learn something. Space is a vacuum, so there's no atmosphere or air drag on the object to slow it down. So that means that once they lift something off into space, supposedly space, once it gets there, it will remain at that same speed in perpetuity. There's nothing to slow it down except the gravity of the Earth pulling it to the Earth, and then it'll eventually crash to the Earth, but it does not lose speed because space is a vacuum. So I used to wonder, how is our planet spinning 1,000 miles per hour in a rotation and going around the sun 365 days or so each year and not slowing down? And I always thought about that. When you think that the Earth would have been slowing down, there's nothing to slow it down. Space is a vacuum. Okay, so this is how. But let me continue, guys. Let me go on. Okay, but above the atmosphere that contains weather condition down to the thermosphere. So let me tell you guys, where they're flying, it's not considered space at all. That's just 227 nautical miles above the Earth in the exosphere, not open space. It's still in one of our atmospheres. It's in the exosphere. That's also where satellites reside in what is considered low Earth orbit. But it's above the atmosphere, which contains weather conditions, going down to the thermosphere, the mesosphere, where meteors burn in and the space re-entry burns, to the stratosphere, where weather balloons fly, and the troposphere that reaches just above Mount Everest, where 70 to 80% of the atmospheric mass is, containing all the weather conditions where commercial jets fly. The commercial jets are flying in the troposphere, okay? So these are all of the different atmosphere layers that we have above us. But the highest that they're getting is into the exosphere, you guys. So the truth is of the matter, they are now finally preparing to send an unmanned Artemis Rocket 1 to the moon, but are having a hell of a time getting the biggest rocket off the ground. And if it does require such a large rocket, then how in the hell did they do it before with a more inferior sized rocket? Then how did they do it then? They're telling on themselves, you guys pay attention. But hey, if you all insist on believing what an independent government space agency feeds you, knock yourselves out. After all, they get $24 billion annually for putting on a firecracker show. But I do salute all the astronauts who have perished in flight missions and tests. We do have to tip our hats off to them because it is a dangerous occupation. So going into space is no walk in the park. It still remains a very hazardous occupation. regardless how high or low they're really going, just liftoffs and re-entries are very dangerous. Do you know that you have to travel at 7 miles per second to reach Earth's escape velocity in order to get into the upper exosphere and not into space? Because they never, what was it, Captain Kurt, William Shatner, and Jeff Bezos, they said the first billionaires in space, people, they did not go into space. Because if they had have gone into space, they would have had on space suits, they would have had on protective space helmets, they would have been locked in, and they would have had a bigger rocket under them, and they would have went higher up, at least into the exosphere. They didn't make it there, you guys. There's one more thing I'm impress upon you guys. Another fun fact, okay, while I'm on the subject. And this is it, I'm getting out of here, okay, because I'm getting winded. But this is fun, you guys. I love stuff like this, and those of you who love it as well, this is fun. Do you guys understand that even the moon is within the Earth's gravitational pull? So unless you fly past the moon's orbital limit, you're always in the Earth's gravity, not outer space. You see? So, no human has ever been in real space as of yet beyond our Earth's gravitational pull. Let me break it down for you guys. Let's say they travel at 7 miles per second and they reach Earth's escape velocity, and they pull through all these different atmospheric levels, you know, the stratosphere, the exosphere, and all this stuff. And then they get past it and they want to go to the moon. Now they got enough rocket power, so now they're on their way to the moon. You know, going to the moon. Once they start getting to the moon, they can cut off their rockets. You know why? Because now the moon is pulling them into its gravity, and it's called a free fall. So now they're not like firing and flying, but they're being pulled into the moon, and that's how they whip around the moon and come back again. So now they're in a free fall to the moon, but the moon is still within the Earth's gravity as well. So it's all in one thing. So until you fly beyond the moon's limit, you will never be in what is considered free space. No one has gone there yet. Don't believe the hype. I'm not trying to be anti-space exploration. I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I'm sticking to the facts, okay? So, you guys, no human has ever been past Earth's gravity and in free space. And when I was in grade school, NASA was saying by the year 2000, we would have colonies on the moon. We'll be going to the moon for the weekend vacation to watch the Earth from the moon's surface. None of that has happened yet, and not even close to it. And now it's 2022. Okay, let's say 22 years later, and they're just doing a highly publicized dress rehearsal with space crash test dummies. And I'm gonna leave it at there, you guys. That's a JD original. I pinned that, you guys. Space crash test dummies. That's what they put in that rocket. They had to shelve the liftoff for now because they have to go back and figure out how they can really do it. They canceled 3 attempts. I'm not making this up, you guys. I'm not Stephen King, you know. Okay, let me get out of here. It's lovely speaking to you guys again. I'm gonna try to be more attentive to these posts. I appreciate everybody who comes in. Every visitor is a blessing. Every subscriber is a gift, and vice versa. I love you all. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your loved one. Keep your eye on what's happening with the world economies. Keep eye on what's happening. You know, I try not to get so emotionally invest on either side of this Ukraine thing and Russia thing, that all this could have been averted. And America is pushing it. Oh, one more thing. America is also instigating China and Taiwan, threatening China. Oh, if you're to invade Taiwan, America is going to have full support of Taiwan, and we're going to, you guys, these are family issues. What language do the Taiwanese speak? I'm waiting. Chinese. What language do half of the people in Ukraine speak? I'm waiting. Russian. These are family feuds, and America is jumping in there, instigating it. And when war breaks out, it's not being fought on American soil. Taiwanese people will suffer and die for America's, what interest they have for these countries to be fighting each other, I don't know. Think about the whys. Got to think about the whys. Got to go, you guys. I love you all. Take care of yourself. Remember, I always say, spread the love, make love great again, because we got to get back to the world. And you guys, Keep safe, okay? Till the next time, take care.